Welcome to the Extremely Non-Extreme podcast. I am the host, Quentin Wittrock. For your year-end binge listening pleasure, I am recording my favorite 5 blog posts from 2025 into this episode consecutively, starting with a post I wrote on October 20th entitled, "I'm Conservative." If the word means what I think it does, then I would call myself a conservative. Financially, in particular, I believe that individuals and countries should save money until they can afford to spend it. And then they should only spend it if they must do so. I also still adhere to quaint notions like rule following, decency, and even some old crusty documents and traditions. As much as anything, though, I think the root of the word conservative, not as being con, but as being serve. Some of you may recall that honesty, integrity, and service are in the top 5 on my list of 7 principles for political leaders. Therefore, I disagree vehemently with any con man or con woman who promotes dishonest notions of conservatism that equate to self-servitism, if you pardon me inventing a term. Please bear with me as I explain and give the words I mention some thought. I laid out this blog post with an illustration of a crossword puzzle in which I listed and showed the following words. Although I am not a cruciverbalist, and that really is a word, I put together a crossword puzzle to illustrate my thoughts on conservatism. Instead of asking you to solve the puzzle, I discuss each word with my theme that it fits. Appropriately, one across on my crossword is conserve. A true conservative believes in conserving resources, including both national resources and capital. Presidents and Congresses who authorize more in spending than they do in taxes are not conservative. Presidents and Congresses who ignore stewardship of the environment are not conservative. The next word was preserve. In my view of politics, the Constitution of the United States of America documents the foremost ideals to be preserved. Upholding our nation's founding document, whether it helps or hurts an immediate policy desire, is conservatism. I'm talking about all parts of the Constitution, not just the parts that fit a particular political agenda. With 3 across, reserve, my thought is that conservatives are people who store assets for the future benefit of others, which assets they hold in trust. Strength, be it military strength or financial strength, should be built, enhanced, and kept in reserve until truly needed. By subserve, I am describing the act of promoting the nation's best interests ahead of one's own. Subservience is not popular in these days of, quote, looking out for number one. But it should be part of being a conservative leader. That is because subjugating personal desires to the good of all is part of being a public servant. When I think about 5 across on my little crossword puzzle, the underserved, I'm thinking about the principle of protecting the vulnerable, particularly children, the elderly, and others who have immutable disadvantages. Conservatives are charitable, where I come from. They look out for their neighbors, particularly the less fortunate than them. In serving the underserved, a conservative government steps in when truly needed and in a way that makes it most effective the use of resources for those in need. Next is the word observe. Norms, traditions, and institutions are observed and honored by conservatives who believe that moral norms, unifying traditions, and healthy institutions are the foundations of a successful society. thus trying to destroy institutions that currently are dominated by political opponents, is not conservative. A federal government asserting power against selected states and cities is not conservative, in that conservatives traditionally have believed in the separation of powers and states' rights, and government ignoring norms by engaging in lawfare, threatening political foes with arrest, stifling free speech and the press, or denying due process is not being run by genuine conservatives. Government officials engaging in corruption are not being conservative, obviously. A government thwarting democracy or overriding checks and balances dishonors the Constitution and thus is not conservative. Deserve is shorthand here for conservatives believing in meritocracy, not government handouts. We believe in principles of personal freedom, limited government, and free enterprise. Lastly, by including undeserved, I'm looking for humility on the part of conservatives. We do not deserve power, riches, influence, control, or the right to oppress others. Anything we have is unearned, undeserved, a gift of grace from God. Note, software ice cream did not make my crossword puzzle because it is not inherently conservative, although it is a gift and I do like it. Finally, in conclusion, service. The sharpest among you linguists already have picked up on the fact that all of the above words contain serve. As I noted at the outset, that is the true root of conservatism. The Judeo-Christian faith, to which so-called evangelicals often link their so-called conservative political ideologies, is based on belief in God and in service to others. A true conservative politician is here to serve above all else. The second post today was from September 1st, 2025, and this was called Leading the Pack in the Future. For nearly 10 years now, the Republican Party has been led by one man and his Pied Piper personality. Although it is a form of codependency, Trumplicanism has worked, especially for Donald J. Trump himself. Republicans, under President Trump, have reached a high point, albeit a chimerical one. Nevertheless, the Trump-shaped elephant is at its peak and soon will start its slide down into oblivion. Sometime in the next 2 years maximum, Republicans will need to start finding a new leader, and that new leader will need to figure out which direction the future can be found. So who can lead? I'll begin with a list of the possible Republican leaders. In addition to J.D. Vance, whose current role as vice president typically would gain him first consideration, the lucky 7 candidates to head the party going forward are, in my opinion, first, Marco Rubio, a once respected U.S. Senator from Florida who's become the current Secretary of State and a Trump acolyte. Nikki Haley, former South Carolina governor and the longest-lasting challenger to Donald Trump in 2024. Third is Donald Trump Jr., the president's eldest son. To the extent the Trump family is an American royalty family, he is the crown prince and the natural heir. Kristi Noem, the former South Dakota governor and current U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security. Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida and a top 2024 presidential candidate. Sixth is Rand Paul, U.S. Senator for Kentucky. He carved out a fiscal conservative niche by voting against the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And then there's Ted Cruz, U.S. Senator from Texas, who finished second in the 2016 primary race. Where can this new leader herd the rats, which is my acronym for Republicans after Trump? What these political leaders and their party will stand for in 2026 and 2028 is even more intriguing of a question. That is because, at the national level, Republicans today have deteriorated into the, quote, whatever Trump recently said, close quote, party. It often is noted that Donald Trump is a politician without ideology, i.e., he is not a traditional conservative, and he certainly is not a liberal. He also has taken varying positions on most political issues, not to mention social issues, legal issues, and cultural issues. He seems disinterested, quite frankly, in policy, in crafting and proposing legislation, or in empowering department heads who he closely manages through well thought through goals. That's just not him. These factors not only make for tough shoes to fill, but they leave behind no roadmap for how to follow him. Therefore, I believe the Republican Party and its would-be next leaders should compete to see who can offer the voting public the biggest alteration of the status quo. Yes, I'm calling for a revolution of sorts. You may recall that each of the last four successful presidential campaigns have promised major changes. Barack Obama actually started this trend with the all-time change election of 2008. After his two terms, voters apparently wanted the opposite kind of change, as they elected Donald Trump to his first term. Then in 2020, Joe Biden promised to undo the Trump years and won on that basis. Of course, Americans knowingly voted again in 2024 to replace democratic transformation with even more strident Trumpism. Moreover, during this same time period, every president who won the White House quickly lost his party majority in Congress during midterm elections. Change sells in politics. So, what kind of change could and should Republicans sell in 2026 and 2028? Populism? No, that's what we have now. Ending foreign wars and entanglements? Republicans might have a slight credibility issue on this, as everyone knows it's easier said than done. Deportations, special tax breaks, and elimination of government waste and fraud? Dude, that's like so meh. They're so last year. Opposition to abortion? How has that been going for you, grand opposition party? None of these approaches would represent change anyway. If Americans really want change, and we surely do, the biggest possible changes would be as follows. Number one, fiscal responsibility. Yes, going back to the fiscal responsibility party, complained bitterly about budgets not being balanced and the national debt not being reduced under the Trump administration. Campaign hard on saving Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which the Trump administration has jeopardized. Promise lower taxes for the middle class, in contrast to Trump administration policy. Then present the American public with a serious plan to upgrade our military, accompanied by a proposed budget to actually make that happen. Modernize our forces with artificial intelligence and robotics. Build more and better ships. Incentivize defense manufacturing and innovation. Third, be the radical party that will stand up for the U.S. Constitution and the rule of law. Concede that the Trump administration disregarded constitutional basics like separation of powers, an independent judiciary, and congressional responsibility for fiscal matters. Vow to honor these foundational precepts. Fourth, demonstrate bipartisanship by agreeing with good things Democrats have done, do, or propose. And here is the fifth and finest, biggest challenge of all. Switch to being the party of ethics and dignity. I know that may sound like a bit of a stretch, but it definitely would be a change. Republicans can point out that corruption, conflicts of interest, and cover up lies are just as rife in the Trump administration as with any Democratic predecessor. Be the party opposed to that. Republicans can gain credibility by admitting their past malfeasance and dereliction of oversight duties. This all will take a lot of gall, but gall is in vogue these days. It will take chutzpah, but chutzpah worked for Donald Trump. Go for it. My third post was much shorter. It was from August 18th, and it was about the subject of Jesus and debt. Whether they are Christian or not, most people agree that a man named Jesus was born roughly 2,025 years ago. You can see the biblical story found in, for example, Luke 2. For the sake of illustrating a different point, let's just assume that Christ's child's contemporaries instantly realized his eventual kingship and decided that Jesus should receive a stipend of 1 million denarii, the local Roman currency, per day for his entire life. 1 million denarii every 24 hours. That was a lot, as the common worker was paid less than 1 denarii per day, 1 denarius. Now, to further illustrate, let us also say, as I do, that Jesus, though crucified to death at age 30-ish, rose again. See the Easter story, for example, in Matthew 28, and has eternal life, as do his believers. Of equal importance, Jesus continues to live, sits at the right hand of God in heaven, forgives sins, and rules the world to this very moment. For purposes of my illustration, the living God also still would be getting his 1 million denarii per day. How much money would Jesus have received by now? If you do the math, my calculator says 365 days per year times 2,025 years times 1 million denarius per day equals almost 740 billion denarii in lifetime pay through the present. That is less than 1 trillion. That is less than 3/4 of a trillion, in fact. So here's my second point. The national debt of the United States currently stands over 38 trillion. That's more than a lot. Assuming a dollar equals a denarius, our national debt is 50 times as much as Jesus has received in my admittedly quirky illustration. His entire lifetime pay so far would be only 2% of our national debt. Folks, we have to do something about this. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, Matthew 6:12. That's not going to work for the United States in this context. Instead, our federal government leaders should seek to live out Romans 13:8. Let no debt remain outstanding except a continuing debt to love one another. My fourth favorite blog post, and these are in no particular order except chronological, was from July 27th. Following the birth of our granddaughter, I wrote this post. It's entitled, My Baby Granddaughter's America. I did this in a poem form, so to speak, and it began like this. A girl was born in our family. She came to the world round the 4th of July. Fair and fairly privileged she is, with faithful parents, loving church friends, a nice home in a safe neighborhood, access to health care and good schools, and an older brother who is adorable. But throughout her life, our country, will it be a sweet land of liberty? Of thee I write. Birthed the same week in 2025 as the USA in 1776, our little darling forever will celebrate alongside her nation. I hope and plead she and her contemporaries will revel in freedom, free to worship, free to speak out sans fear, free to enjoy the fruits of their labor and investment. She only needs one big brother, too. Our federal government must become limited in scope so as to not interfere with her freedoms. It also must be limited in size so she and her fellow taxpayers can afford it. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, she might need those some far off day, as many of her classmates surely will. Yet reserves will run out when today's tots are in first grade. Oh, and welcome to America, baby. Your share of the national debt is $100,000. Pray that she doesn't and need not dread our financial demise. Due process of law and other justice rights, they must also remain available for all with equality. At times, I wonder if we will need to wait for this baby and her sibling to lead our country with the right principles, with dignity, integrity, and honesty, even with transparency, seeking first to understand, leaders actually trying to serve others, not themselves, striving for peace, protecting the vulnerable, and honoring the rule of law in a nation of laws, not men. Preserving democracy at home and around the world. Those are the leaders I want for our grandkids. The baby girl born into our family, may she indeed live in a sweet land of liberty. For thee I pray. Further on a patriotic theme, with this being the 250th anniversary of our country, I, on May 7th, wrote a blog post that I entitled America at 250. Excuse me. As you know, the 13 American colonies jointly declared their independence on July 4th, 1776. From this, you can easily calculate that our nation will turn 250 years old in 2026. And, as you also likely know, Donald Trump is the current president of the United States, putting him in the position to lead the singing of Happy Birthday at our quarter millennial celebration. What you may not know is that another entertainer named Curtis 50 Cent Johnson, the $50 bill, and the entire word 50 sometimes are referred to with the slang fitty. And any number that ends in 50 also can carry the same moniker. Now you know, and you can be as hip as the title of this blog post, America at 250. What none of us may know today, however, is what condition America will be in at 250. Ideally, we would be older, but wiser. We could just as easily, however, be older, but weaker, older and wealthier, or older but wearier. My look ahead follows. Great like when, and first in what? One thing of which I am almost sure is that our independence-declaring fathers never met a man like Donald J. Trump, and they could not have envisioned him as our leader 250 years in advance. President Trump, of course, has vowed to make America great again. He also has pledged to put America first. On July 4th, 2026, President Trump will be 1.5 years into his second term, and in all likelihood will continue to have a Republican majority in the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. He has placed loyal to him servants in charge of administrative departments. Hundreds of federal judges, including 3 members of the U.S. Supreme Court already, are Trump appointees. This all indicates that by the 250th birthday, America is likely to be fully molded in Mr. Trump's image. Imagining and assuming that he does make America great, and I hope he does, I sometimes wonder what great will look like. At the same time, it is worth considering what again will look like, as in make America great again. Will our country be great again like it was in 1776? Or will it be as it was in 1860, just prior to the Civil War? In 1946, after the Depression and World War II? In 1968, when the Vietnam War was raging, Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. were shot, and race rioters were rioting? The year 2000? Similar, if America indeed is first, in what ways will we place at the top? It will be fascinating to see what the Trump administration has in mind and what it can accomplish by 2026. It recently hit me that we can predict answers to these questions. The key is that our president and his fans revel in the meme, promises made, promises kept, to praise the Trumpian style and success. They are convinced that he honors all of his commitments. If they are correct, Trump's 2024 campaign promises all will come to fruition, and America will be made great and first in the following ways, plus more. My first bullet point there was immigration-related issues, including crime and fentanyl, will be eradicated through deportations and border control. Also, inflation will have ended and prices will actually be down. Thirdly, healthcare costs will have fallen. Woke will be abolished. Wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, along with all foreign entanglements, will be history. Tariffs will produce increased federal revenues, together with U.S. job and manufacturing growth. The size, cost, and hindrance of government bureaucracy will be significantly reduced, with waste completely purged. Education will be reformed, and student outcomes enhanced. Energy production will increase. And lastly, taxes on some forms of income will be eliminated and rates will be cut. While certainly not on board with the means, e.g., ignoring the rule of law, being intentionally cruel, and leading a circular firing squad of tariffs that we use for some of these ends listed, the accomplishments of such results would be a great cause for celebration. So best wishes to us for a happy and healthy 250. One last point for your cognition by that big round number national birthday. Donald Trump, barring something unexpected, will have been president for more than 2% of America's 250 years. His 5+ years in office will be more than were served by John F. Kennedy, who served less than 3 years, or even Abraham Lincoln, who served 4 years and 1 month. It will be longer than the combined tenure of William Henry Harrison, 1 month, James Garfield, 6.5 months, Zachary Taylor, 1 year and 4 months, and Warren Harding, 2 years and 5 months. More than those four combined. With such experience in office, congressional backing, a hand-picked support staff, and a clear mandate from 49% of the voting public, what could go wrong? Get your fireworks ready, folks, and your grill, and we'll see you at the party. I'm going to give you one extra one today. This is actually a 6th one, and I entitled it Gutless Congress Money Mess. We have a problem here in the good old United States of America. We are broke. No, not all of us as individuals, but all of U.S., in all caps, as a nation. Our federal government is broke and getting broker every day. Am I the only one who thinks this is a problem? Am I the only one with parents who never borrowed money to buy anything? Am I the only one whose spouse used to be a certified public accountant? Of course I'm not. Congress is the cause of the problem. Nobody in Congress has the courage to tell the truth to the voting public about our nation's brokenness. Few Republicans will stand up to President Trump when he wants to spend more money while giving out tax breaks. Even fewer Democrats would stand up to their leaders if they wanted to do the same. And none of them will say no to special interests. Not to put too fine of a point on it, but I call that gutless. And we are stuck in a mess. It's not that complicated. The messy morass is made up of three ugly substances. The first is debt. The United States of America owes more than $38 trillion. With that number projected to hit $50 trillion in 10 years, the second is our unbalanced budget. America this year will spend $7 trillion and bring in $5 trillion, a disparity that is going to get much worse soon. The third messy substance is selfishness. Let's unpile the mess here, starting with the national debt. The problem with debt, generally, is that you have to pay it back. On top of that, lenders charge interest. And if you borrow more money, to pay your interest, you owe more principal and will incur more interest. Such a downward financial spiral results in not having money left for the things you need. None of this is all that complicated. When in such a financial quagmire, the only way out is to spend less than you bring in. Make a balanced budget and stick to it. Brilliant! But Congress is responsible for our nation's finances, especially the budget, taxes, and spending. Congressional involvement tends to take the shine off of most brilliant ideas. The net result of this year's One Big Beautiful Bill Act are that the 2025-26 budget that substantially enlarges our debt is now in place. The relatively minor steps that DOGE took may help, but a major difficulty is that only discretionary spending can be controlled in the annual budgets. Nearly half of that is for national defense. Even if all discretionary spending, including the military, were removed, meaning all employees and expenses of all departments were eliminated, we still would have an unbalanced budget. That is because interest on the existing national debt is over $1 trillion per year, and entitlement spending on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, employee pensions, etc., exceeds $4 trillion, while projected revenue is less than $5 trillion, as I said. Courage is needed. Quote, when you want to help the people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. Close quote. I assume this is a quotation from Thomas Sowell about politicians. Members of Congress, in particular, are prone to put their self-interest in re-election and fundraising ahead of truth-telling and even American survival. And if they were not selfishly thinking about their own well-being, what our Congress representatives would tell us today is that we have only two choices, neither of which we want to hear, but we have to hear them. We must raise taxes or reduce spending, particularly by making future recipients not quite so entitled to future entitlements. Moreover, failure to do these things may not only have economic consequences, but severe national security risks, as our country will be even more indebted than we are now. Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid, along with interest payments and funding our military, comprise the bulk of federal expenditures. These entitlements were designed for a country with higher birth rates and lower life expectancies. Today, we no longer can afford to start paying benefits at the ages we do now, and we must make wage earners contribute above the current income caps. This is not eliminating or even cutting anyone's existing benefits. Only Congress has the power to make these program eligibility and contribution adjustments. Until we are extracted from our current mess, Congress also needs to find ways to increase tax revenues across the spectrum of taxpayers, both corporations and individuals. If Congress had guts, it would tell these truths and start to fix the mess. With that, I'll close. I'll wish you a happy new year and look forward to having you back in 2026 with the Extremely Non-Extreme podcast. To subscribe, if you're not already a subscriber of my principle-based politics blog and the Extremely Non-Extreme podcast, go to my website, principlebasedpolitics.org, and you'll see a subscription form. All you need to do is enter your name and your email address, and I will email links to those out to you for free whenever I publish. So thank you once again.